Today I'm going to be focusing on student well-being and Islamic education and my research within these domains. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm researching this. So Islamic schools have a really unique and important role in our society. They help us, they're institutions that help us uphold the Ijaza system, but they also should help students face the challenges that are presented to them today. So there's a hadith by the Prophet ﷺ where he says, "The example of guidance and knowledge with which Allah has sent me is like abundant rain falling on the earth, some of which is fertile soil that has absorbed rainwater and brought forth vegetation and grass in abundance. And another portion of it was hard and held the rainwater, and Allah benefited the people with it, and they utilized it for drinking, making their animals drink from it, or irrigation of the land for cultivation. And a portion of it was barren, which can neither hold the water nor bring forth vegetation. Then it gave the land no benefits." The first is the example of the person who comprehends Allah's religion and gets benefit from the knowledge which Allah has revealed through me, the prophets, and learns and then teaches others. The last example is that of a person who does not care for it and does not take Allah's guidance revealed through me. He is like that of barren land. Ijaza and Islamic education is what keeps us connected to the Prophet ﷺ's teachings and Islam. Modern education often prizes things like speed and status, but the Ijaza system insists on depth and patience. So knowledge should not just be about getting a certain status or receiving a certain role. I think it should be inherently connected to faith and character. And today's world is overwhelming with information and misinformation. And so the Ijaza system helps to protect authenticity and make sure that the truth of our religion reaches us in its purest form. So my research focuses within educational psychology, which basically explores how people think and how they develop, how they learn, and how they find motivation. So as the hadith mentioned, the knowledge should not just be about knowing a certain thing, it should be about actually comprehending it, applying it, and being able to care for it. So knowledge without faith, it leaves us incomplete, like the hadith said, it leaves us barren. Because while knowledge of the world can give us insights on what we can do, our deen teaches us why and for whom we do it for, and makes our contributions more fruitful. So my research focuses on how Islamic schools can design learning environments that simultaneously promote academic regard, tarbiyah, and student vitality in order to uphold and sustain the respected Ijaza system in today's day and age. So how have I been researching this? My research is a bit different in the sense that it is not basic research or pure research. I'm focusing more on evaluation research and action research. Basic research is really important in the sense that it generates new knowledge and theories and helps us understand the world. But evaluation lets us see whether the specific program or intervention is actually working, and action research takes it a step further by allowing us to test changes in our own practices and learn from them. So there's a few different ways that I have implemented these different research and the solution that I've used. Each has given me a unique perspective on different domains, such as educational psychology, student well-being, and Islamic education. So my goal is to bring these experiences together and find connections and insights that can inform my own personal research goals. First, I worked with Dr. Marie Drysdale as a research assistant. She is the educational psychology professor at Iqra, and she runs the Wellbeing lab, which is a wellness lab for students. A lot of my research with her examined different informal support systems for students, such as peer support. It was facilitated through different literature reviews, but also facilitating different support sessions for students, and documenting how students engage with one another in supportive and informal environments compared to standard therapy. I also worked with the Faculty of Engineering Community Wellbeing Office, particularly with Bernada Donovan, who is a PhD candidate and Community Wellness Officer, on both her research and her different wellness initiatives. With her, I observed and analyzed different question-led discussions for her participants in her doctoral study on moral injury in academia, which basically investigates different the psychological toll of value conflicts in academia. On the practical side, I contributed to her initiatives such as Chat and Recharge Cafe, which functioned as action research. So we trialed different wellness activities in the engineering building, and we gathered feedback and refined programming to meet students' needs. Lastly, I worked as an educational psychology researcher for a nonprofit organization called Hafiz App and Academy. And most of my research with them focused on the idea of motivation and sustaining motivation. So here my focus was on extensive literature reviews on topics such as persistence, self-efficacy, and attribution theory, followed by recommendations on how these could be incorporated into lesson plans and student engagement strategies in Islamic settings. So there are three main shared themes that I found throughout all of these different research experiences that I had. Belonging, meaning, and agency. All of these, I believe, are extremely important in order to comprehend, care for, and apply for knowledge in a way that keeps us connected to our theme. So first, belonging is a basic human need, and it drives both motivation and academic endurance. So my research with peer support, as well as my research with HIF, so that students tend to succeed when they are part of networks built on trust and compassion, and belonging was the most consistent positive outcome for student wellness programs. It also connects deeply with the idea of connecting with the Ummah in Islam and how important this is to our religion. And bringing these insights into schools can be creating true belonging in many different ways. First is through pedagogical designs, meaning creating inclusive teaching practices, peer support, and safe learning spaces. And second is through building a strong Islamic foundation by helping students feel connected to not only each other, but to Allah and their Ummah. Next is meaning. So my research with Granada showed that students who faced moral injury, which is when learning environments didn't align with their values, experienced harm in their learning. So during the research process, we found that even just witnessing actions on campus that did not align with people's values, such as other students cheating or other students being in inappropriate relationships, actually affected their own learning. And this to me just reinforced the idea of the importance and benefit of Islamic schools, where people can learn in an environment with people that share their own values. So throughout my research, I've learned that purpose-driven learning strengthens student vitality and motivation. And as someone who has studied psychology, I know that meaning learning reinforces neural pathways in our brain, which strengthens our neuroplasticity, which is basically helps us build skills in learning such as memorization and even character building. And Islamic concepts that connect to this is also niyya, such as intention, having intention in your learning, and taqwa, which is God consciousness, which means connecting everything that you do back to your religion, and it helps make learning more meaningful and ethically grounded. So applying these research insights into school can happen in 3 different ways. One of them is through curriculum design, which means embedding Islamic values into each and every subject in school instead of just having it as a separate, on its own thing. And second is through daily practice, meaning helping students connect everyday tasks and everyday assignments to specific intentions, and this can help in fostering engagement and ethical growth. The last one is agency. So my research, particularly with facilitating different student wellness sessions in the Wellbeing lab and engineering students, shows that students tended to grow greater vitality when they were given choice and responsibility in their wellness practices and in their learning. I found that this really aligns with the idea of power of choice, meaning part of what fundamentally makes us human in Islam especially is the fact that we get to choose between right and wrong. And so introducing this idea in education helps students make decisions that are more ethically aligned, and when they make decisions that are more ethically aligned, their learning itself improves as well. So in practice, this means designing pedagogy that emphasizes student choice and student responsibility. This also means implementing more reflective practices and supportive feedback that can help remind students and reinforce the idea that their actions are accountable before Allah, which also, again, connects directly to learning and ethical growth. So to bring this back to my research aim was to find different implications for Islamic schools seeking to design learning environments that promote academic rigor, tarbiyah, and student vitality, which ultimately supports the ijazah system today. There are a few different ways we can do this. Is by designing curriculum as a moral and intellectual ecosystem, by creating student-centered learning environments, by honoring ijazah through ethical practice, through guided agency in learning and connection through the ummah and strength and taqwa, by centering education on things like faith, character, and understanding, and community. I want my research to empower students to seek Allah's pleasure in everything that they do, not in just to separate academics and worship as two separate things, so that they can uplift their communities and build a more resilient ummah, inshallah. So the next phase of my research is more action research focused. So now that I built a bit of a foundation with my research, I want to apply it through some practices that I'm doing as an Islamic teacher, and with the guidance of different graduate programs. So for example, educational leadership at Boise is going to help me formulate, help me implement the different practices that I found into teaching practices as well, and a graduate program at Rasul Academy, which is focused on Islamic education, will help further implement these findings. And through both, I want to apply the research that I've learned so that I can hopefully create Islamic schooling that is founded on ijazah and help students today in the challenges that they face today. So some future directions that I will take with the programs, with the research that I'm doing now, includes designing faith-integrated curriculums with administration in the Islamic school that I'm working with, enhancing student agency through peer support, bridging tradition and innovation in education, and doing more action research for school improvement.
But it's a strong end to our presentations today. We'll take a couple of questions, inshallah, if anybody has any.
I don't know. I feel like this is kind of maybe a common thing, but I've personally heard a lot of people that have gone through Islamic school have bad experiences because of teachers. I don't know. I feel like having people of authority, they shape a lot of like how a student grows up, especially in like an Islamic school where it's like religion and schooling. So it's like, how have you looked at that aspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like that relates a lot to the aspect of belonging, in the sense that teachers can really impact how a student feels in the classroom. And for example, in the research that I did with Dr. Malik Drysdale, we focused on peer support, which shows that a lot of the times students feel, when they feel that they are heard on a more equal level, their learning improves. So sort of bridging the gap between the formalities of teacher-student and helping students feel like they are a part of their learning and giving them the agency to be a part of their learning definitely helps bridge that gap.
What do you think about, like, so you mentioned like designing the curriculum and things like that. Something that I was thinking of was like designing programs for parents so that they can also be involved in their children's learning. I just wanted to know what you think about that, or is that something that you would consider doing in the future?
it is definitely is important for parents to be involved in student learning, and I think the three main themes that I found applies just as much to teachers as it does to parents, because letting your children have a sense of belonging and through your family and through teaching them their connection to faith, I think helps improve their learning. Not because if it's just in the classroom when they go home, then they don't experience that at home, then it's not going to be as impactful. And the same thing with meaning, teaching students, teaching your kids that the reason why you're learning, you're not learning to just get a certain degree, you're not learning to just show someone else that you learned this, you're learning for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, agency, letting your child choose, giving them a sense of choice in their learning, involving them in the learning process, not just saying you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Having conversations with them, I think that's extremely important.
So like, I feel like so many parents like in our community, like they don't unfortunately like embody these values when it comes to education. They kind of like either leave their kids to like the public school or like whatever, or they're like view on education is kind of exactly what you described, what it shouldn't be like. It's just something to obtain or get. Like, would it be helpful to have like programs for parents so that they're more aware of it? Because like, I don't know like how we could.
Yeah, definitely. I think I haven't done much research when it comes to programs for parents, but I think that would be definitely interesting for schools to also implement different programs and courses even for parents to take as their child's learning school.
Sorry. I was just wondering, so another thing is like particularly in like Islamic-based education, more often than not, it's like more comfortable for women to have women teachers, and then like for men to have men teachers, just because Islam is not just like fiqh, right? It's like character development and building and all of that, and you can only like reach that when you have like that close relationship. So it's like obviously you can't necessarily have that with the opposite gender, right? Because you have to maintain that barrier. So it's like, how do you look at that? Because it's like, I understand the aspect of like education, but like Islam is, higher than just like textbook education.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's definitely really important. I think that ties into value-based learning. So, for example, when students are in Islamic schools and they are able to connect with female teachers instead of when they're in public schools and they have to maybe interact with male teachers or male students, there's a conflict of value, a conflict of moral. They might feel like, obviously within Islam, there's a certain level of connection that they cannot build there. So building Islamic schools that incorporate this value system where, female students can connect with female teachers and male students connect with male teachers, and there isn't those inappropriate relationships that we sometimes see in public schools. And with my research with Renata Donovan and her study, it was actually pretty common for a lot of students, even it was not related to Muslim students, so even just in general, when students saw these inappropriate relationships and when they encountered them, it definitely impacted their learning. So building Islamic schools that, I think it's definitely important for the foundation of Islamic schools to be value-based and to build this foundation of values even before introducing concepts of this fiqh in education.
A lot of questions.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a fantastic presentation, I think. I'm just have a comment on something question, just something that came to mind. Yesterday on a lab meeting, and we discussed a paper about indigenous spirituality and indigenous groups in the workplace actually, and because that's what we look at. And it was really your presentation reminded me a little bit about it because they spoke about how indigenous groups, there is no like solid barrier between the workplace and between their family, and their spirituality is very blended. Their spirituality in the workplace that's embedded. And it made me think about the fact that, of course, Islamic schools need to be structured better, and they need to be implemented with the best intention. But I wonder if there's a way to kind of incorporate some of Islamic spirituality into existing public schools already to kind of reduce inappropriate things that Muslim students might see that could impact their learning. But of course, that's difficult and very a lot of policies that need to be made. And I find it interesting how here in the West it's so divided. It's like, you know, even if you go to a workplace as a Muslim, you would be lucky to have a prayer room for like Muslim coworkers, right? Yeah, it's just a thought I had.
No, that's interesting, yeah. I think it would definitely be amazing if we could implement some of those things in public schools, but I guess because, again, some of the value conflicts, it's a little bit hard.
It's hard.
But it would definitely be interesting. I would love to see that. Yeah.
I have a question. So you mentioned before that when students encounter behavior that doesn't necessarily reflect their values, isn't compatible with their values, they tend to be affected in terms of their learning and whatnot. So my question is, do they necessarily, would exposure to that behavior in the context where you're learning differ from being exposed to that behavior, like say in the general public on the subway, for example?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, so I can't answer that completely, but in the study that I did with Renata, she focused on moral injury in academia specifically. So she mentioned that in academia, when it's connected to your learning, it has a stronger impact. I don't know how much of a stronger impact it has, but when your learning environment includes values that contradict your morals, then it impacts your learning more.
Sorry, I had to go for part of the presentation, so I'm not sure if you covered this, but how does, because someone else talked about experiences in Islamic schools, and how does, where commonly a lot of people feel shame or fear in terms of asking questions, and you mentioned agency and gaining knowledge and actually questioning things, so how do we create an environment that doesn't fuel shame or doesn't cause a fear-based relationship to spirituality while also still encouraging inquisitive behavior and attitudes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I did a little bit of research when I worked with Hafiz, the Youth Academy, with this, and a lot of the research shows that when students are shown that failure is okay, which seems very obvious, but a lot of the times it's not presented in schools. But when this idea is shown to students consistently, it helps make it easier for them to ask questions without the fear of the judgment or without the fear of being shamed or judged. So building classrooms where students are, part of agency is not only just providing students with the choice of what they can do, but it's also with feedback is a big part of agency. So when students are able to do something and get feedback for it that is not detrimental to their learning, for example, they ask a question and or they say something and maybe it's not entirely correct, but the feedback they receive is not injuring their agency, then it definitely promotes more of that sort of learning in the classroom.
I have a follow-up. You're right about that, but I was more talking about relationships to, for example, the attitudes of the teachers, and while speaking as a woman, sometimes you feel people don't view you as a human being, so that can really impact someone's relationship with their faith. So I know someone suggested having same gender or same sex teachers, but I feel that still doesn't erase that perpetuation of shame for existing sometimes. So I feel maybe we need to target that specifically if we're redesigning an education system about how people should exist or how people should be treated in certain ways.
Definitely. I think if we want to rebuild Islamic schools, the foundation of it involves values and involves building a foundation of, because of course in Islam there's no discrimination, right? So building that foundation and building that level of awareness for students and building that connection to them, that their connection to Allah is not, like a woman's connection to Allah is not any less than a man's connection to Allah, or their contribution to society is not any less than a man's contribution to society. Building those foundations, I think hopefully would help, but it would definitely be interesting to have more initiatives that combat that specifically and help to dismantle that.
Cool.